No maps, no backup, no second chances. Out on the frontier, the rules were short enough to carve on a knife handle, adapt or die. The wilderness didn't hate a man, it was worse than that, it simply didn't care. It didn't care how far he'd come, how strong he was, or how badly his family back east needed him to make it home. The cold came anyway, the hunger came anyway, and the men who lived long enough to grow old out there had one thing in common: the right tools, in the right hands. Not the finest gear money could buy. The right gear. The few pounds of steel and leather and iron that stood between a man and a cold, quiet death in country no one would ever find him in. Every item he carried had to earn its place on his back. One wrong choice, one forgotten piece of kit, and the frontier collected what it was owed. Today we're breaking down the 7 tools that meant the difference between another sunrise and a shallow grave. The gear that kept frontiersmen alive when everything around them was trying to kill them. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. Number 1. The blade. First and foremost, a frontiersman without a knife was already half dead. He just didn't know it yet. There was an old saying that drifted west with the trappers: the knifeless man is a lifeless man. Out in the mountains, that wasn't a proverb. It was arithmetic. The knife skinned the game that fed him. It carved the wood that warmed him. It cut the rawhide that repaired everything else he owned. And when a fight came close and personal, it was the last argument he had left. No 2 blades were alike. Every man carried what he trusted. Some bought their steel from traders. Others hammered a blade out of an old file or a worn-out horseshoeing rasp, fitted a wooden handle, set a few rivets, and called it done. Fancy didn't keep you alive. Sharp did. The Green River knife was a favorite. A simple, honest trade blade perfect for butchering. The Bowie was longer and meaner, a tool and a weapon in the same sheath. And the skinning knife itself, short, wide, and curved, could strip a hide clean off an animal without tearing the pelt. And a clean pelt was money. Warren Ferris, riding with the fur companies, described knives passing between white trappers and native traders as currency itself, as good as coin in a country that had none. James Clyman, an old hand from the 1820s, nearly died the day a man tore the butcher knife from his belt and drew it across his chest, and lived only because he braced himself and refused to flinch. A man's favorite knife was something personal, something intimate. He'd wager his life on it 100 times over. Steel kept a man alive up close. Lead did it from a distance. Number 2, the rifle, a lifeline you could fire. Just like the knife, a frontiersman's gun was his survival. Hunting, defense, trade. It all ran through one reliable weapon and the skill to use it. Enter the Hawken rifle. Built in St. Louis by the Hawken brothers, this was the gun of choice for mountain men who might have to stop a charging bear or a mounted raider with a single shot. Shorter, heavier, and throwing a half-inch ball of lead, it could drop a buffalo where it stood. Power mattered out here, but power wasn't everything. Sometimes versatility mattered more. The Northwest trade gun, a smoothbore musket, would fire a single ball or a fistful of shot, which made it a jack of all trades. Trappers carried them. Traders carried them. Native warriors carried them too. If a man could own only one gun, that was the smart bet. And for the last resort moments, there were the big single-shot horse pistols. Heavy, slow to reload, useless past a few paces. But when a man had nothing else, that one shot was everything. The 1830s brought a quiet revolution. The percussion cap replaced the flintlock bit by bit, and a capped rifle would fire in the rain where a flintlock only sparked and swore. But a rifle was only as good as the gear that fed it. A powder horn, often cut from bison horn, kept the powder bone dry. A powder measure made every load the same, because accuracy is just consistency repeated. A lead ladle and a bullet mold turned scrap metal into ammunition over the evening fire. Because mountain men didn't buy bullets, they cast them. Lose your cap tin or your ball pouch in a river crossing and that Hawken became an expensive club. A rifle was a lifeline, but a lifeline won't warm you in the dark. Number 3. Fire. The test no man could fake. A frontiersman without fire was, once again, a dead man on a delay. Fire was warmth. Fire was cooked meat that wouldn't rot in his gut. Fire was a column of smoke that could signal a partner or warn off a threat. Without it, a man was just something soft and slow, waiting to freeze or be eaten. The workhorse method was flint and steel. A hard strike of high-carbon steel against a sharp edge of flint threw a shower of sparks. The steel was often reforged from an old file, hard enough to spark, soft enough not to shatter. If flint was scarce, chert or jasper or even a chip of agate would do. What mattered was the spark. But sparks alone were nothing. Tinder made the fire real. The best was char cloth. Linen or cotton burned just enough to catch the faintest spark and hold it, smoldering slow and hot until it could be coaxed into flame. When char ran out, a man turned to the land. Amadou, the soft inner flesh of a bracket fungus, or dry grass, shredded bark and fine plant fiber teased into a bird's nest, and all of it had to stay dry. A man kept his fire kit in his possibles bag, wrapped in a tin or an old pouch. A man might own almost nothing, but he never gambled with his fire. And when there was no steel at all, a man fell back on the oldest tools there are. The bow drill, the hand drill. Wood grinding against wood, sweat and patience turning friction into heat, heat into an ember into flame. That was the real test. Any man can light a fire on a dry afternoon. The one who could raise a flame in the rain, in the snow, with the wind clawing through the pines, that was the man who lived to see morning. Number 4. The bags. A life carried on one shoulder. Out here, a man wore his survival across his body. No backpacks, no cargo pockets, just leather and canvas, and everything in it had to justify its weight. The possibles bag came first. Tough leather worn crossbody, holding whatever a man might possibly need. His powder measure, lead balls, patches, flint and steel, a spare knife, maybe a strip of dried meat for a bad day. To an outsider, it looked like a purse. To a mountain man, it was toolbox, first aid kit, and survival cash in one, and a man without it was half naked in the wild. The bullet pouch did one job and did it fast. Worn tight under the arm so a man could reload without fumbling, because in a gunfight the second shot belongs to whoever's hands are quicker. The market wallet was dead simple. A long tube of canvas, open in the middle, folded over so nothing spilled. It carried dried meat, flour, trade goods. The haversack borrowed from soldiers was a man's mobile pantry, worn across the body with the day's food within reach. Jerked venison, a tin cup, maybe a small kettle. And the ditty bag borrowed from sailors held the small things that saved a man when his gear failed him. Sewing needles, spare flints, fishing line, a coil of sinew for repairs. Because gear breaks out there. It always breaks, and the man with a needle and thread wasn't helpless when it did. Number 5. The camp kitchen, cast iron and coals. A man could live rough, but he still had to eat, and cooking in the open is its own hard skill. At the heart of it sat the cast-iron Dutch oven. Heavy, brutally heavy, but it could bake, boil, stew, and fry, one pot for 100 meals. Set it in the coals, pile embers on the lid, and it turned raw flour and wild game into biscuits and stew in the middle of nowhere. For baking, the reflector oven, a folding tin contraption, caught the fire's heat and threw it back onto dough, making camp bread and pies possible without a stone hearth. The spider skillet, a cast-iron pan on 3 stout legs, planted itself right in the coals instead of teetering on shifting logs. Stable, hot, perfect for frying meat or corn cakes. None of it glamorous. All of it the difference between a hot meal and another cold, hungry night. Number 6. Water, the enemy that looked like salvation. Water meant life. And water could kill a man as fast as thirst. Sometimes faster. The simplest carrier was the waterskin, a pouch of tanned hide, stitched tight and sealed with pitch or wax. Flexible, tough, and it kept water cool, though it made every drink taste of wet leather. Wooden canteens, carved from oak or maple like tiny barrels, rode steady on the trail, but let the seams dry out and they'd leak like a cracked dam. And by the mid-1800s, mass-produced tin canteens were everywhere, though tin rusted and turned a man's water to iron. But carrying water was the easy half. Finding clean water was the killer. Springs were safe. Rivers and lakes were a gamble. Dysentery and cholera cut down as many men as any musket ball. A single careless drink from the wrong stream could put a strong man in the ground inside a week. The wise ones boiled it when they had the time. Many didn't have the time, and the tribes already knew this country. They sealed woven baskets with pine resin, carried water in cleaned animal bladders, folded birch bark into containers. The frontiersmen who lived longest were the ones humble enough to learn. Number 7. The small things that saved men when everything else failed. The big tools get the glory. The rifle, the knife, the fire, steel. But out here it was the small, overlooked gear that quietly kept men breathing. Every man carried something with an edge and a heft. A tomahawk, a hatchet, or a full axe. It split firewood, notched shelter logs, cracked bone for marrow, and in a close fight it ended arguments as fast as any bullet. A dull blade, though, is just a heavy stick, which is why a plain metal file was worth its weight in gold. Trade records show files in constant demand out west. A silk scarf looked like nothing. It was everything. Sunshade, wind block, dust mask, bandage, sling, and in a pinch, a makeshift bag. And wool kept men alive. The Hudson's Bay Point blanket, thick, dense, and warm even when soaked through, was among the best a frontiersman could own. The little woven point stitched into the edge told its size and weight, and a man would trade a stack of hard-won furs for one, knowing it was the difference between waking cold and not waking at all. Even plain canvas earned its place. Ground cover, tarp, lean-to, a patch for anything that tore. Every man who planned to survive packed some. So there they are. The 7 tools that carried a man across a continent that was trying to kill him. Look at them laid out together and you notice something. Not one of them did the work on its own. The knife was nothing without the hand that knew where to cut. The rifle was scrap without the man who could cast his own ball. The fire steel was a cold lump of iron without the patience to coax an ember to life in the wind. The tools didn't keep those men alive. The knowledge did. The gear was just where the knowledge lived. And that's the part we've misplaced. We carry more in our pockets today than a mountain man owned in his life, and most of us couldn't start a fire in the rain, skin a deer, or find safe water if the lights went out for a week. They had 7 tools and a head full of hard-won sense. We have everything, and remember almost none of it. They didn't survive because the frontier was kind. They survived because they knew things we've been rich enough to forget.